My name is Julia Foster. I'm 28, a software engineer, and I've always trusted logic over charm. My life is compartmentalized. Code that compiles, coffee black because cream is a luxury I rarely remember to buy, and routines that make the world feel safe even when my family doesn't. If there's a family photo, I'm usually at the edge, shoulders angled like I'm already halfway out of the frame. My younger brother, Nate, takes center stage, always smiling midlife, casually commanding attention. Nate is the spark. I am the spine. I keep the structure, the order, the silent ledger of who owes what and who will never pay it back. Growing up, I was the responsible one. Mom would say, Julia was born organized, and Dad would add, and dramatic, whenever I asked the wrong question. Nate remained the baby, even as he turned 27. Every story, every family narrative had him as the plot and me as the silent, uncredited editor. I remember saving coins in a peanut butter jar at 10, trembling with pride as I brought home a used Game Boy. Dad saw it differently. If you can afford toys, you can afford to help, he said, sending me on errands with a list and a lecture. That December, Nate unwrapped a brand new console. Don't say we never give you kids anything, Dad said. I told myself I didn't care. I told myself that for years, jaw stiff from clenching, while my small victories dissolved into the family ledger that never acknowledged them. Adulthood changed the set pieces, not the script. I learned to navigate servers, troubleshoot printers, and keep my life in neat spreadsheets. Rent, utilities, groceries, boundaries. All of it cataloged like evidence of my sanity in a world that assumed I would always absorb chaos. Sundays were always the hardest. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, a TV too loud, Aunt Marcy delivering opinions like they were law. Nate's got such a spark, she'd say. Julia's the steady one. He'll soar. Everyone nodded. They treated me like a chair they could sit in when convenient, ignoring the weight pressing against my frame. Over the years, the small injustices stacked like bricks. Age 19, co-signed Nate's apartment, covered months he didn't pay. Age 22, gas bill, temporarily in my name because Mom said the online portal made her head spin, which then became a 7-year fixture. Age 24-27, deposits for weddings, motorcycles, online courses. My money stretched thin to patch holes no one asked me to notice. When I finally bought my hatchback, 5 years old, low mileage, service history neat, it felt like reclaiming a piece of myself, a tiny island of ownership amid a sea of obligations. And yet, it never felt enough. Not really. The house taxes, utility bills, unending favors, they were always looming, whispered or shouted, the unspoken code. Julia will fix it. She will absorb it. She will endure. Even my routines were small acts of rebellion, rituals to preserve sanity. Sunday night, pasta portioned for the week. Wednesday, therapy tabs left open but never booked. Saturday drives around the lake under the streetlight, listening to podcasts about boundaries, imagining my voice saying no out loud and feeling the power in it. But all of this, my careful, quiet order, was about to be tested. It started with a call, just a regular Tuesday evening, 7:18 p.m. My phone lit up. Dad. Never a greeting, never small talk when he's about to drop a decision like a bowling ball. We're leaving tomorrow. Your car has already been sold. My brain stalled. I'm sorry. What? He repeated slowly, like I couldn't comprehend. Your car is sold. It's done. Something in me detached and laughed. Not joy, not relief, shock, and then clarity. But you forgot one thing. What are you talking about? I stared at my ceiling light, humming in the empty kitchen. They had sold the one thing truly tied to me, my independence, my rules, not flashy, not dramatic, just mine. The realization hit like a physical weight. Mom's voice whispered in the background, Julia, who is it? Nate's, joking. Tell him he's welcome. I hung up, hands shaking, heartbeat loud. I looked around my small apartment, the sticky notes of chores, errands, and reminders. Life lived neatly, feeling like it belonged to someone else. At 9:12, the phone buzzed again. Mom, Nate, Dad, messages flying like sparks. I ignored them. The room pulsed in the fading blue of the evening, then went dark. For the first time in years, I allowed a plan to form that wasn't about rescuing anyone but myself. I scribbled on an old envelope, "What is actually mine?" Bed, laptop, breath, car, with a question mark. I knew the answer, even if they didn't. At 6:43 a.m., Dad called again. Cheery, manipulative. "Fresh start. You'll understand when you visit." Fresh start from what? I asked. "Debt is a game. We want a pound of flesh, not giving it," he said, framing exploitation as wisdom. I made coffee, folded laundry that didn't need folding, held the keys in my palm, and felt their weight. For the first time, I wasn't planning to save anyone. By the time the evening came, I understood. You need the long version. The years of little hooks, small obligations piled onto me because I stayed still, because I endured. Age 16, 19, 22, 24, 27. They had leveraged every quiet act of responsibility, every bit of trust, every nickel and hour I gave to them. And now the final lever had been pushed. The line of the title, "The Confrontation Over the Car," was a culmination of decades of being the stable one. That night, I slept an hour with my shoes on and woke clear. This call had broken something and fixed something. I realized, as I lay in my bed staring at the ceiling, that I would have to reclaim my life in ways subtle and seismic, by asserting boundaries for the first time in a lifetime of being the family's invisible backbone. The morning air was sharp when I parked 2 blocks away from my parents' house. I wanted to be ready, not just for confrontation, but for clarity. For years, I'd absorbed chaos like a sponge. Today, I was testing if I could finally stand apart. I rehearsed the word no under my breath until it sounded ordinary, unthreatening, yet absolute. No. Simple, complete, no explanations, no rescues. When I knocked, the door opened almost immediately, as if wedged open by the chaos that lived inside. The hallway smelled of hairspray and toast, the scent of routines designed for everyone but me. Suitcases lined the wall, like soldiers standing at attention. On a chair, Bryn, Nate's fiancé, sat with glittery bags glinting under the morning sun, a small, expensive animal waiting to be admired. The TV blared morning chatter, anchors laughing, the volume higher than polite. Nate came from the kitchen with a piece of toast in his mouth, grinning like I'd arrived for a road trip. "Did you bring the docs?" he asked, dragging the word docs like it was a party invitation. "What docs?" I replied, steady. My heart thumped, but my voice didn't waver. He glanced at Dad, scrolling on his phone. "Title, registration, whatever." Nate shrugged. "You don't need a car title to get on a plane." "And you didn't sell my car," I said, calm but precise. Dad finally looked up. "Don't start," he muttered. Mom appeared in the doorway, lipstick half applied. "Julia," she said, warning tone, "that means you're about to disappoint us. We're on a schedule." "You didn't sell my car," I repeated slowly. "You handed someone a piece of paper that isn't legal and promised something you can't promise. It's titled to me. It's tied to my company fleet. You cannot sell it." Dad smirked. "We got $9,500. It's done." "From whom?" I asked. "What's his name? Why do you care?" Nate chimed in. "You'll get your cut. Chill." I looked at them all, the tiny click inside me like a lock turning. "No," I said. "You are not using my name to fund your mistakes. No, that's final." The room froze. Even the TV seemed quieter. Mom's hands twitched, as if she might plead, but I didn't flinch. "Julia, don't ruin this. Nate needs a fresh start," Mom said softly. "Fresh start?" I echoed. "He's had 12 fresh starts. I am not responsible anymore. Not for bills, not for rent, not for weddings, not for mistakes you continue to repeat." Dad's face hardened. "Watch your tone." "You don't understand. This isn't anger. It's boundaries," I said. "The car is mine. The tracker under the dash is mine. The keys are mine. The title is in my desk. You sold a story, not a car." Silence. Bryn hovered in the doorway. Mascara wand paused. "What's happening?" she whispered to Nate. "Nothing," Nate said, casual, but the lie didn't reach my ears. I placed a folded paper on the table, a ledger of the last 12 months. House taxes, utilities, rent for Nate, deposits for wedding venues. All numbers, all evidence, all reminders that I had been the invisible bank and babysitter. The fallback for the family who never asked first. Mom's eyes flickered over it. "You're keeping score?" Yes, I said. Someone has to. If I don't set this down, the game never ends. Phone buzzed. First Dad, then Mom, then Nate. I didn't answer. They were inconsequential now. I had the car, the contract, and my resolve. You would leave us stranded? Mom asked. You're inconvenienced, I said. There's a difference. Dad stepped forward. You think you're better than us because you have money. I think I'm separate from you, I said, precise. That's new. I patted the spare key in my pocket, the weight grounding me, then slipped it back in. Not for them, for me. I turned and walked out. No slam, no theatrics, just the TV murmuring behind me, phones buzzing, and my own heartbeat finally loud enough to feel alive. Outside, the morning had that aggressive clarity, the kind that cuts away indecision. I rounded the corner to my hatchback. Hands shaking, I pressed the unlock. It chirped obediently, reminding me that some things still belong to me. Sitting in the driver's seat, I stared at my reflection, older than I felt, younger than I acted. My phone buzzed 19 times, messages piling, but I ignored them. At the stop sign, I whispered to no one. No is a full sentence. The first hour of this new day was an exam. Could I resist fixing everyone's mess? Could I resist explaining, rescuing, rationalizing? For once, the answer was yes. I drove to work, parking among the sedans and SUVs, making quiet adult decisions. My boss, Joel, peeked over the cubicle wall. You good? Family stuff, I said. He nodded, the face managers make when they want you to know they're human. If you need time, I'm okay for once. Mostly true. I settled in, ran scripts, checked logs, drank water, and reminded myself with every task. You can do hard things without drama. By lunchtime, 47 missed calls, 19 texts, and 3 voicemails flashed across my phone. Unknown number, probably the buyer. I forwarded it to the fleet office. Unauthorized sale, buyer contacting me, please advise. Minutes later, reply. Buyer will be refunded, vehicle flagged. Relief, gratitude, a sentence that treated me like a person with a solvable problem. That evening, the phone was silent. I cooked, walked, watched other lives through lit windows, and wrote lists, what I did and what I didn't. What I did, said no, stayed calm, secured my property, returned responsibility to its rightful place. What I didn't, call police, gloat, post spreadsheets, use words I'd regret. For the first time, the chaos that had been my family's constant pulse felt manageable. My decisions were mine. My life was mine. And yet, this was only the beginning, the first assertion, the first reclaiming of power. The battles ahead were both internal and external, for I knew that love, guilt, and obligation could be heavier than any contract or ledger. The first week after the confrontation passed in a blur of small, decisive actions. Every choice I made felt like peeling layers of someone else's life off my own. I removed my card from shared streaming services, canceled the auto pay for the gas company. Each interaction was a micro-declaration. I am not the safety net anymore. I am not the solution to your chaos. When the gas company rep said, "You've been paying a long time," I could only nod and smile. "Yes, I'm done," I said. Her tone, a mix of surprise and respect, felt like someone noticing a long-hidden truth. I booked therapy, first available slot a week away, and I didn't cancel it. I didn't need excuses. I didn't need their input. The act itself felt radical, a commitment to me and to understanding the emotional chains I'd carried for decades. Messages from my parents kept coming, each a test of my resolve. Mom sent photos of the balcony with captions like, "See what you're missing." Bryn sent voice notes, "We love you, but you made this ugly." I pressed play on silence. Let them project. Let them perform. My boundaries didn't need applause. I began tiny rituals. Sunday night, portioned pasta into containers for the week. Monday morning, wipe down the counters. Wednesday, therapy search tab open, never booked until now. Saturday, I drove around the lake, parked under a streetlight, and listened to a podcast about boundaries like tools, not weapons. And I wrote. Always, I wrote. My notes on my phone were lines I wanted to say aloud one day. No, I can't do that. I won't add my name. That doesn't work for me. You'll have to figure it out. Practicing internally, I realized something. The words became smaller in my head and stronger in reality. A shrug, a joke, silence, and with each delivery, my spine straightened. 3 days after the confrontation, the fleet office confirmed the buyer would be refunded, the vehicle flagged. The weight of months of worry lifted in increments so tiny I could almost miss them. The car was still mine, the authority restored, the boundary enforced. By the 7th day, I had settled into a rhythm that didn't revolve around anyone else's demands. I woke up, made coffee, didn't check my phone first, watched a bird hop along the fire escape, and for the first time, life felt simple, almost ordinary. Work became sanctuary. HR called one afternoon with a polite disclaimer. My father had left a voicemail about a company car dispute threatening the family trip. They confirmed they had deleted it, no further involvement. I laughed, then cried quietly, tears of relief, not grief. Messages from family slowed, then stopped. When they resumed, I typed clear responses. I love you, Mom. I'm available when you can acknowledge what happened and respect my boundaries. No emojis, no apologies for being firm. A small blue heart later felt like a folded truce flag tucked into my pocket. I started noticing myself again. The little rituals, the stable routines, the private victories. Grocery lists no longer screamed duty. They were mine. My apartment, my kitchen, my desk, my life, my rules. Then came the moment I realized the shift was complete. Driving around the lake one evening, the sun dipping behind the water, I said aloud, "No is a full sentence. Not to anyone, not for anyone, to me." It was simple, radical, true. The weight of the past decade, the invisible labor, the unpaid debts, the compromises forced upon me, had begun to lift. I could love my family without being their bank. I could care without being consumed. And yet, I knew this newfound control was fragile. Each text, call, and expectation could attempt to pull me back into old patterns. But I was ready. I had the ledger of my choices, the therapy appointments booked, the car under my control, the internal mantra of no. It wasn't freedom yet. Freedom was still tentative, still proving itself. But it was there, waiting for me to take it fully. And for the first time, I could see the life I wanted, unclouded by obligation, guilt, or manipulation. The next steps were mine. The next choices were mine. The next breaths, the quiet victories, the small affirmations, all mine. Weeks passed, and while my routine solidified, the echoes of the confrontation never fully faded. My parents had learned I was resolute, but habits die slowly. The calls came sporadically, each one a test. Veiled guilt, thinly disguised demands, hints of obligation. It started with a text from Mom, a photo of Nate and Bryn at some brunch, smiling like nothing had changed. Caption, "Family first, remember?" I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Then came Dad, voice clipped over the phone. "Julia, we need to talk about Christmas plans." I paused, not because I wanted to go, but because I had to be deliberate. "Dad, I'm not managing anyone's logistics this year. I'll celebrate on my own." Silence. A pause long enough for the old guilt to creep in, but I held firm. The escalation hit hardest on a Thursday. Bryn called, cheerful, oblivious. "Julia, we need you to help pick the venue. Nate's really excited." "Bryn, I'm not involved," I said calmly. "All decisions are yours. I'm not providing any resources or guidance." "But it's Christmas, Julia," she pressed. "You can't just—" "Yes, I can, and I am." Her sigh cut through the line, frustration thinly veiled as disbelief. She didn't understand. They had always treated my compliance as default, my presence as necessary. They'd been wrong. The first real test came the following Sunday. I received an email from Mom titled "Urgent, Nate's car situation." My chest tightened automatically, but reading it, my irritation turned to clarity. The email requested payment, co-signing, logistics. Every line assumed I would intervene. I typed a response slowly, deliberately. "I will not be responsible for Nate's car, bills, or any obligations that are not mine. Please respect my boundaries. If there is a legal issue, handle it yourselves." No explanation, no apology, just facts. Later that night, Nate called. I let it ring until voicemail. He left a message. "Julia, why are you being like this? We're family. We need you." I played it once. Then I erased it. I didn't need to defend my choices. I didn't need to validate my autonomy to someone who had never respected it. And yet, part of me, the part raised to fix, to provide, to absorb, ached. It was old wiring. But this time, I acknowledged it without surrendering. I made tea, sat by the window, and watched the world move outside. A breakthrough came when I realized control didn't require confrontation. It required consistency. Boundaries weren't declarations, they were habits. Each no enforced the last. Each refusal strengthened the next. One night, Bryn texted, "Julia, you're ruining Nate's life. He's heartbroken." I replied once, "I'm not. I'm preventing him from repeating mistakes that were never mine to solve. Your role is to support him without leaning on me." No emojis, no sentimentality, no excuses. The tension, however, wasn't just external. Internally, I wrestled with guilt and the ingrained need to protect. Therapy became my anchor. Session after session, I dissected patterns, the subtle manipulations, the years of silent compliance. I began to identify triggers, anticipate requests, and respond without reflexive guilt. By the end of the month, I had transformed my life in ways that surprised me. My apartment became a sanctuary, meals and errands predictable, and my mental space unclaimed by others. I could leave the house without second-guessing, sleep without the weight of others' expectations, and even smile at my reflection without suspicion. But the family wasn't finished testing me. Invitations, subtle guilt trips, and passive-aggressive texts arrived like clockwork, and with each one, I rehearsed the mantra that had become my shield. No is a full sentence. This was the new battlefield, one where love, duty, and obligation collided with clarity, resolve, and self-preservation. And I was determined, finally, to win it on my terms. By early December, the push and pull had slowed. My family had tried, nudged, and tested every angle, but something had shifted. They began to understand, however reluctantly, that I was no longer the default problem solver. The default yes. It started with small victories. I declined Bryn's repeated calls to help coordinate holiday plans. I ignored subtle guilt-tripping texts about Nate's career setbacks. When Dad asked for assistance with taxes, I reminded him firmly, "That's not my responsibility. Please handle it or hire someone." For the first time, they didn't argue. They paused. Even Mom, who had always relied on my compliance, sent a simple message, "Noted." That one word, neutral and non-confrontational, felt revolutionary. The true test came on Christmas Eve. The house was decorated as usual, lights twinkling, smells of cinnamon and pine curling through the air. I arrived with my own small gift for Nate, a gesture of love, not leverage, and entered knowing the atmosphere had changed. Mom smiled, carefully neutral. Dad gave a nod, more acknowledgement than authority, and Bryn, poised to manipulate, hesitated mid-sentence. The moment was silent, fragile, and electric. I held my ground. I stayed calm. I participated when I wanted to, withdrew when I didn't, and spoke only when necessary. At dinner, Nate, slightly embarrassed, muttered, "Thanks for, everything." I smiled without guilt. "You're welcome. And remember, I'm not your safety net anymore. You handle what's yours." There was a pause, a collective inhalation, as if everyone was recalibrating to a new version of me. A version that could love without being used, support without being consumed, and care without losing herself. That night, alone in my apartment, I reflected on the journey. The car, the unpaid bills, the constant pull of family expectations. It had all been a crucible, forging my clarity. Boundaries, I realized, were not walls, but the scaffolding of self-respect. I wrote in my journal, "I can love my family without surrendering myself. I can care without being consumed. I am responsible for my life, and no one else's mistakes will define me." For the first time in decades, I felt fully myself. The weight of others' expectations lifted, replaced with quiet certainty. My life, my choices, my rules. Weeks later, when the family reached out, the tone had changed. They asked politely, respected limits, and occasionally sought guidance without assuming compliance. And I responded from a place of clarity, firm, fair, unyielding. The car still sat in my driveway, the symbol of regained control. My routines, rituals, and therapy sessions strengthened my mental and emotional independence. I had learned to navigate love, obligation, and familial ties without sacrificing my identity. And somewhere, deep inside, I smiled at the knowledge that no matter what storms came next, I would face them with resolve, with boundaries, with clarity, with me intact. The final text from Mom summed it up best. "We'll try to do better. Thank you for teaching us." I didn't reply immediately. I didn't need to. The lesson had been taught, not by confrontation or argument, but by unwavering consistency and courage. That night, I drove past the lake one last time before winter fully set in. The streetlights reflected on the water. The car hummed beneath me. I felt the fullness of my own life, a life I had fought to reclaim, step by step, choice by choice. And for the first time in years, I slept knowing that boundaries weren't barriers. They were liberation.